I spent 20 years building a life with my wife, working every hour I could to keep our family afloat. Then one night, I saw something through a bar window that made my blood run cold. She was with another man, and the way he touched her told me everything. I didn't confront her. I watched, I waited, and I planned. When I finally left, I made sure she'd never find me. But 7 months later, she did. And what she brought with her changed the game completely. My name is David Cooper. I'm 41 years old, and I've spent the better part of my adult life with grease under my fingernails and the smell of motor oil in my clothes. I own Cooper's Auto Repair in a mid-sized town in Pennsylvania, the kind of place where everybody knows your name and your business. Been running that shop for 15 years, built it from nothing with my own 2 hands, and a loan I'm still paying off. Megan and I got married young, both of us barely 21. Some folks said we were crazy, too young to know what we were doing. Maybe they were right. But back then, it felt like the only thing that made sense. She was beautiful, sharp as a tack, and had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. We had Brandon a year later, then Hannah came along 14 months after that. 2 kids before we hit 23. Life came at us fast, but we handled it. Or so I thought. The shop kept me busy. Real busy. Weekdays I'd be there from 7 in the morning until 6 at night. Sometimes later, if a job ran long. Saturdays too, especially during summer when the heat had everyone's AC units giving out and their engines overheating. Megan worked as an office manager at a local insurance company. Decent pay, good benefits. Between the 2 of us, we made it work. Paid the mortgage, kept food on the table, sent both kids off to college. Brandon's studying engineering at Penn State. Hannah's doing pre-med at Temple. I'm proud of them. Worked myself to the bone to make sure they'd have opportunities one never had. Took out loans, worked extra jobs, said yes to every overtime hour that came my way. That's what a father does. You sacrifice. You provide. You make sure your kids don't have to struggle the way you did. But somewhere along the way, while I was busy being a provider, I stopped being a husband. Or maybe Megan stopped being a wife. Hard to say which came first. All I know is that by the time I figured out what was happening, the damage was already done. The foundation had rotted out from under us, and I was the last one to smell the decay. It all started on a Wednesday evening in March. I remember because it was the day after Brandon's birthday, and we just sent him a care package with his favorite snacks and a check to help with books. I'd stayed late at the shop finishing up a restoration job on a '67 Chevy pickup. One of those projects you take on because you love the work, not because it pays well. When I finally locked up around 8:30, I was tired, hungry, and looking forward to a hot meal and maybe catching the end of the Sixers game. Instead, I got the beginning of the end of everything I thought I knew. I didn't go straight home that Wednesday night. Instead, I got a text from my buddy Greg, someone I'd known since high school. He was at Murphy's bar watching the Phillies game and asked if I wanted to join him for a beer. After the day I'd had, dealing with that stubborn Chevy and Tom, riding everyone at the shop, a cold one sounded perfect. Murphy's was one of those neighborhood places where the bartender knew your order before you sat down. Nothing fancy, just good beer, decent wings, and a big screen for the game. I pulled into the lot around 8:45, spotted Greg's truck, and headed inside. He was already at our usual spot near the window, 2 beers waiting. We talked shop for a while, complained about work, joked about the Phillies' defense. Normal stuff. The kind of conversation that doesn't require much thinking, just 2 guys unwinding after a long day. Then I saw her. I was glancing out the window, just watching people walk by on the street, when Megan appeared on the sidewalk. My wife, dressed nice, hair done up in that way she only bothered with for special occasions. But she wasn't alone. A man walked beside her. Tall, decent build, wearing a dark coat. They weren't holding hands, weren't wrapped up in each other, but something about the way they moved together made my stomach tighten. Then he did it. Just for a second, casual as anything, he placed his hand on the small of her back as they turned the corner. That gesture, that tiny, intimate touch that said everything. My beer stopped halfway to my mouth. Greg noticed, followed my gaze, then looked back at me with concern written all across his face. Dave, that your wife? I nodded slowly, couldn't speak. Who's the guy? No idea. I managed to get out. We both stood up at the same time. I threw some cash on the table and headed for the door, Greg right behind me. By the time we got outside, they'd turned the corner. I spotted them a block down, walking toward the parking lot behind the old pharmacy. You sure you want to do this? Greg asked quietly. I didn't answer, just started walking. We hung back far enough not to be noticed, but close enough to keep them in sight. They reached a dark SUV in the lot, something new and expensive looking. The guy opened the passenger door for her. She got in, smiling at something he said. No hesitation, no guilt on her face. Just comfortable like this was routine. The SUV pulled out, and I ran back to my truck with Greg jogging behind me. We followed them through town, keeping a safe distance. They were being careful, weren't checking mirrors or taking weird routes. This wasn't their first time doing this. That much was clear. They drove for maybe 20 minutes, heading out toward the edge of town where the buildings got older and the streetlights got dimmer. Finally, the SUV turned into a parking lot I recognized. The Sunset Motor Lodge, a rundown place that rented rooms by the hour, the kind of spot you only went to if you didn't want to be seen. I pulled into a spot across the street, killed the engine, and watched. The guy got out first, walked around to open her door. They went into the office together. Through the window, I could see them talking to the clerk. A minute later, they came out with a key and walked toward one of the rooms. Room 114. I watched them go inside and close the door. My hands were shaking. Not from anger yet, just shock. Greg sat beside me in silence, probably not knowing what to say. What do you say when you watch your buddy's wife walk into a motel room with another man? I pulled out my phone, opened the camera, and started taking pictures. The SUV's license plate, the motel sign, the room number. Then I zoomed in and got a shot of them through the window before the curtains closed. Not perfect photos, but good enough. What are you going to do? Greg finally asked. I don't know yet, I said, my voice flat. But I'm gonna need proof. All of it. We sat there for another 30 minutes, just watching that closed door. The anger was starting to build now, slow and hot, replacing the shock. 20 years. 2 kids. A life we'd built together. And she was in there with him. Finally, I started the truck. Let's go. You're not going to confront them? Not yet. I pulled out of the parking spot and headed back toward town. I need to think. I need a plan. I dropped Greg off at Murphy's so he could get his truck, then drove home. The house was dark when I arrived. Megan's car wasn't in the driveway. Of course not. She was still at that motel. I went inside, grabbed a beer from the fridge, even though I didn't want it, and sat at the kitchen table in the dark. The photos on my phone glowed in front of me. Evidence. Proof that my marriage was a lie. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been an hour. Could have been 2. Eventually, I heard her car pull into the driveway. The front door opened. She came in humming something under her breath, set her purse on the counter. David, you still up? I didn't answer right away. Just sat there in the dark, watching her move through the kitchen, turning on lights. When she finally saw me sitting at the table, she jumped a little. God, you scared me. Why are you sitting in the dark? She smiled, trying to be casual. How was your day? I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd spent half my life with. The mother of my children. A stranger. Where were you tonight, Meg? Her smile faltered just a bit. Just out with some friends from work. We grabbed dinner, had a few drinks. What? Which friends? Just some people from the office. You don't know them. She opened the fridge, pulled out a bottle of water. Why are you asking? I stood up slowly, pulled my phone from my pocket, and sat on the counter in front of her. The photo of her and that man walking into the motel was pulled up on the screen. Her face went white. Who is he, Megan? She stared at the phone, her mouth opening and closing. No words came out. I asked you a question, I said, my voice deadly calm. Who is he? Megan stared at the phone screen for what felt like an eternity, her face cycling through emotions I couldn't quite read. Shock, definitely. Fear, maybe. But no shame. No guilt. That's what got me the most. David, I can explain, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I almost laughed. Explain what? That you weren't at the Sunset Motor Lodge tonight? That the man in that photo isn't real? That I didn't watch you walk into room 114 with him? Her hand started shaking. She set the water bottle down on the counter, gripped the edge for support. How long were you watching? Long enough. I picked up my phone, pocketed it. Long enough to see you smile at him. Long enough to watch him open doors for you like some gentleman. Long enough to know this isn't the first time. It's not what you think. Then what is it, Meg? I kept my voice level, controlled. I wasn't going to yell. Wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been sneaking around behind my back. How long? She looked down at her feet. A few months. 5, maybe. 5 months. The words are like a punch to the gut, but I kept my face neutral. 5 months. While I've been working my tail off at the shop. While I've been sending money to Brandon and Hannah for school. While I've been coming home exhausted every night. You've been with him. You're never here, David. Some fire crept in her voice now, defensive. When's the last time we had a real conversation? When's the last time you asked me about my day and actually listened to the answer? You're married to that shop, not to me. I was working. I said slowly, deliberately. Each word measured. Working to pay for this house. Working to keep our kids in college. Working to keep us afloat. And you repay me by sleeping with some guy at a cheap motel. His name is Kevin, she said quietly. Kevin Walsh. He's a claims adjuster. He comes to our office twice a month for meetings. I don't care what his name is. I moved closer, and she took a step back. I don't care what he does for a living. What I care about is that for 5 months, you've been lying to me. Every single day, you looked me in the eye and lied. Tears started rolling down her cheeks. I didn't mean for it to happen. We started talking, and he just listened to me. He made me feel seen, David. When's the last time you made me feel that way? So this is my fault. The words came out sharper than I intended. I work too much, so that gives you permission to cheat? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? I grabbed my phone again, pulled up another photo. This one showed her and Kevin in the parking lot of her office building, his arm around her waist. Because these pictures tell me everything I need to know. You're comfortable with him. This is routine for you. She looked at the photo and fresh tears spilled over. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, David. I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk at the store, Meg. A mistake is being 5 minutes late. I gesture at the phone. This is a choice. You chose him over me. Over us. Over 20 years of marriage. Please, she whispered. Please, can we just talk about this? Can we try to work through it? I looked at her, this woman I'd spent half my life with, and felt nothing. No love, no anger, just a cold, hollow emptiness where my heart used to be. No, I said quietly. We can't work through this. You destroyed that possibility the moment you walked into that motel room with him. I headed toward the stairs. I need to think. You're sleeping in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow, we figure out what comes next. David, wait. Guest room, Megan. Now. She opened her mouth to argue, but something in my expression stopped her. She grabbed her phone from the counter and walked toward the guest room, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I went upstairs to our bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. The photos on my phone glowed in the darkness. Evidence of betrayal. Proof that everything I believed in was a lie. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat there thinking about the next 20 years of my life and how different they were going to look from the last 20. By the time the sun came up, I knew what I had to do. I took the next day off work, called my foreman, Tommy, and told him I had a family emergency. He'd been with me since I opened the shop, knew better than to ask questions. Said he'd handle things and hung up. I spent that morning sitting in my truck in the parking lot of a McDonald's 3 blocks from my house, nursing a coffee and trying to think straight. Everything I thought I knew had been turned upside down in the span of 24 hours. My marriage was a lie. The woman I trusted implicitly had been betraying me for months. And I had no idea what to do next. That's when I remembered something. A guy I knew from high school, Bobby Sinclair. We played football together, ran in the same circles. After graduation, he'd gone into private investigation work. Divorce cases, mostly. Background checks. Surveillance. The kind of work that required discretion and a willingness to see people at their worst. I pulled up his website on my phone. Sinclair Investigations. Professional, confidential service. I dialed the number. Bobby answered on the second ring. Sinclair Investigations. Bobby, it's David Cooper. From school. Cooper. His voice warmed immediately. Man, it's been years. How you been? Been better, I admitted. Listen, I need your help. Professional help. The warmth faded, replaced by business-like efficiency. What's going on? I told him. Not everything, just enough. He listened without interrupting, then gave a low whistle when I finished. Sorry to hear that, man. That's rough. He paused. You want to know how deep this goes? Yeah, I need to know everything. How long, how often, where they meet. If there's money involved. All of it. I can do that. It'll take maybe a week, 2 at most. I'll need some information from you. Photos of your wife, her schedule, the guy's name and workplace. Kevin Walsh. Claims adjuster. Works for the same insurance company as her. I can get you everything else. Good. Email it to me. I'll start Monday. What's this going to cost me? He quoted a number that made me wince, but I didn't argue. Information like this was worth every penny. Do it. Whatever you find. I need to know. You got it. And David, I'm sorry, brother. Nobody deserves this. I hung up and sat there in that parking lot, watching people come and go. Families with kids, couples holding hands, normal people living normal lives. Lives that made sense. Mine didn't make sense anymore. But it would. Soon as Bobby finished his work, I'd have the truth. And then I'd know exactly what to do next. Bobby worked fast. By the end of the week, he had enough evidence to bury Megan and her boyfriend in court. He met me at a diner on the outskirts of town, slid a manila folder across the table, and ordered us both coffee. You're not going to like this, he said. I opened the folder. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Megan and Kevin Walsh walking into hotels together, sitting close at restaurants, his hand on hers. One picture showed them kissing in the parking lot of her office building, broad daylight, not even trying to hide it. But that wasn't the worst part. Check the bank statements, Bobby said quietly. I flipped through until I found them. There were charges I'd never seen before on our joint credit card. Jewelry purchases, expensive dinners, even a weekend trip to Atlantic City that Megan had told me was a work conference. Thousands of dollars. Money we should have been saving for Brandon and Hannah's tuition, spent on her affair. She's been pulling cash advances too, Bobby added. Small amounts. Nothing that would trigger alerts. But it adds up. I'm estimating she's funneled close to $8,000 over the last 5 months. $8,000. Money I'd earned breaking my back at that shop. Money that should have gone to our kids' education. I felt sick. There's more, Bobby said. He pulled out another set of documents. I did some digging on Walsh. Turns out this isn't his first rodeo. He's been divorced twice already, both times because of infidelity. Your wife knew what she was getting into. I closed the folder, pushed it away. That's enough. You want to keep digging? No. This is plenty. I looked at Bobby. Thanks, man. I owe you. Just take care of yourself, David. He stood, dropped a 20 on the table for the coffee. And get yourself a good lawyer. That afternoon, I went to see Andrew Pierce, a divorce attorney with a reputation for playing hardball. He looked through Bobby's folder, made a few notes, and leaned back in his chair. This is solid evidence, he said. With this, we can push for a favorable settlement. She won't have much ground to stand on. I want the shop protected, I told him. That business is everything to me. I built it from nothing. We'll make sure it stays yours. What about the house? She can have it. I don't want anything that reminds me of her. Andrew nodded, making more notes. What about your kids? They're adults, so custody isn't an issue. But they should know what's happening. That was the part I'd been dreading. Telling Brandon and Hannah that their mother had destroyed our family. But they deserve the truth. I'll tell them this weekend, I said. They're both coming home for spring break. Good. Keep me updated. Andrew handed me a business card. And David, don't do anything stupid. No confrontations. No threats. Let me handle this through the proper channels. I nodded, but part of me wanted to drive straight to Megan's office and drag Kevin Walsh out by his collar. Instead, I went home, packed a bag, and checked into a motel across town. I was done living under the same roof as a liar. Spring break arrived, and with it came my kids. Brandon got home first, pulling into the driveway in his beat-up Honda on a Friday afternoon. Hannah's train came in that evening. I picked her up at the station, and we drove to a restaurant downtown, neutral territory where we could talk. They sat across from me in the booth, both of them looking confused and worried. Brandon folded his hands on the table. Hannah fidgeted with her napkin. Dad, what's going on? Brandon asked. Mom's been calling us nonstop, but she won't say why. I took a breath. No easy way to do this. Your mother and I are getting divorced. She's been having an affair with a man from her work for the past 5 months. Hannah's hand went to her mouth. Brandon's jaw tightened. I found out 2 weeks ago. I continued. I've hired a lawyer, gathered evidence, and filed for divorce. The paperwork's already been served. Oh my God, Hannah whispered. Dad, I'm so sorry. Who is he? Brandon's voice was ice. His name's Kevin Walsh. Claims adjuster at her company. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm handling it. And I need you both to know that this isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. Brandon shook his head slowly. I can't believe she'd do this to you. To us. She made her choice, I said. Now I'm making mine. I'm leaving kids. Not just the house. I'm leaving town. They both stared at me. What do you mean? Hannah asked. I've got a buddy in Montana, runs a restoration shop out there. He's been asking me to come work with him for years. I'm taking him up on it. I can't stay here, not with all these reminders. When? Brandon asked. 2 weeks. I'm tying up loose ends with the business, selling my share to Tommy. He's been wanting to buy me out anyway. Hannah started crying. But we won't see you. You'll see me plenty. You can visit during breaks, summers. And I'll come back for important things, graduations, weddings, all that. But I need distance from her. We talked for another hour. By the end, they understood. They didn't like it, but they understood. Brandon even said he'd help me pack. The next 2 weeks were a blur. I sold my stake in Cooper's auto repair to Tommy for a fair price, enough to start fresh out west. Closed out bank accounts, transferred assets, made sure everything was documented and legal. Packed what I wanted to keep and donated the rest. Megan tried to stop me. Showed up at the shop one afternoon, begging me to reconsider. David, please. We can fix this. I'll end it with Kevin. I'll do whatever it takes. I didn't even look up from the transmission. I was rebuilding. Too late for that. Our kids need you here. Our kids are adults. They'll be fine. I need you here, she said, her voice breaking. That made me stop. I straightened up, wiped my hands on a rag, and looked at her. You needed Kevin Walsh. You got him. Now live with that choice. She left in tears. On my last day, I loaded everything in my truck, hugged my kids goodbye, and hit the road before dawn. Didn't leave a note for Megan. Didn't say goodbye. Just disappeared. Like I'd never been there at all. Montana was nothing like Pennsylvania. Wide open spaces, mountains in the distance, air so clean it almost hurt to breathe. My buddy Jake ran his restoration shop outside Billings, specializing in classic trucks and farm equipment. The work was good, honest, and kept my hands busy enough that I didn't have time to think about what I'd left behind. I rented a small cabin about 10 miles from the shop, 1 bedroom with a wood stove and a porch that looked out over rolling hills. It was quiet, peaceful, everything my old life wasn't. Jake didn't ask too many questions, just put me to work and paid me fair. The crew was small, 3 guys including me, and they respected a man's privacy. We'd work from dawn until dusk, then head to the local bar for a beer and some pool. Simple routine, no complications. About a month after I arrived, I met Nicole. She worked at the diner where I grabbed breakfast most mornings, always had a pot of coffee ready, and a smile that seemed genuine. Brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, laugh lines around her eyes. The kind of woman who looked comfortable in her own skin. You're the new guy at Jake's place, she said one morning, pouring my coffee. Word travels fast around here, I replied. Small town. Everyone knows everyone's business. She set the pot down. I'm Nicole, by the way. David. She didn't pry, didn't ask where I was from or why I'd come. Just brought my eggs and toast, made small talk about the weather and the Broncos game from the weekend. It was easy, natural, the kind of conversation that doesn't require you to be anyone but yourself. I started coming in more often, sometimes for lunch, sometimes just for coffee in the afternoon. We talk about nothing important, music, movies, the best fishing spots in the area. She told me she'd moved to Montana 5 years ago from Colorado, wanted a fresh start after a bad breakup. I told her I was doing the same thing, leaving out the details about Megan and the affair. One evening after work, I stayed late at the shop finishing up a carburetor rebuild. When I finally headed out, it was past 9 and the diner was closed. But Nicole was still there, wiping down tables. I knocked on the glass door. She looked up, smiled, and let me in. Kitchen's closed, she said, but I can make you a sandwich if you're hungry. Just wanted to say hi, I admitted. Maybe see if you want to grab a drink sometime. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. I'd like that. We went out that Saturday. Nothing fancy, just a local bar, couple of beers, some conversation. She told me about her family back in Colorado, her dream of opening her own restaurant someday. I told her about Brandon and Hannah, about the shop I'd built and sold, about starting over. You seem like a man who's running from something, she said, not unkindly. Maybe. Or running towards something better. She smiled at that. I liked that answer. By the time summer rolled around, Nicole and I were spending most of our free time together. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. Just 2 people who'd been through the ringer, finding comfort in each other's company. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. 7 months after I left Pennsylvania, My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. David. The voice was familiar, but not one I wanted to hear. Brandon? What's wrong? My son sounded tired. Dad, Mom's been looking for you. She hired a private investigator. I think she found out where you are. My stomach dropped. How did she? She called Hannah, crying, saying she needed to talk to you. Hannah didn't tell her anything, but Mom's been making calls, checking with your old contacts. It's only a matter of time. I sat down on the porch steps, ran a hand through my hair. All right. Thanks for the heads up, son. Dad, she's desperate. I don't know what she wants, but be careful. We hung up. I sat there for a long time, watching the sun set over the mountains, feeling that old familiar not return to my gut. I'd known this day would come eventually. You can't just disappear and expect the past to stay buried forever. 2 days later, she showed up. I was working on a Dodge Power Wagon in the shop when Jay called out, David, you got a visitor. I looked up and there she was. Megan, standing in the doorway of the shop, looking thinner than I remembered. Older, worn down. She was holding something wrapped in a blanket, and when I got closer, I realized what it was. A baby. My hand stopped moving. My brain stopped working. I just stood there, staring at her and that infant in her arms, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Hello, David, Megan said quietly. Her voice shook. We need to talk. I set down my wrench, wiped my hands on a rag. Jake, I'm taking a break. We walked outside, away from the shop, toward my truck. The baby was sleeping, tiny face peaceful and unaware. I didn't want to ask, but I had to know. Whose is it? Megan's eyes filled with tears. Yours. His name is Matthew. He's 3 months old. I shook my head slowly. No, that's not possible. We haven't been together in over a year. I was pregnant when you left, she insisted. I didn't know until after you were gone. I tried to find you, but you disappeared. David, please, he's your son. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something in her eyes I'd seen before. Desperation. The same look she'd had when I caught her with Kevin's emails open on her laptop. You're lying, I said flatly. I'm not. I have the birth certificate. Your name is on it. Then you forged it. I took a step back. That baby isn't mine, Megan. The timeline doesn't work. Please, she whispered. Please, David. Kevin left me when he found out I was pregnant. I have no one. No money. I need help. And there it was. The truth, laid bare. She wasn't here because she loved me or because that baby was mine. She was here because she'd burned every other bridge, and I was her last option. Get a paternity test, I said coldly. Bring me proof, and then we'll talk. I can't afford. Not my problem. I turned and walked back toward the shop. Go home, Megan. Megan didn't leave Montana right away. She checked into a motel in town, kept calling me, leaving voicemails begging me to reconsider. I didn't answer. Instead, I contacted my lawyer back in Pennsylvania, explained the situation, and had him file for a court-ordered paternity test. 3 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a woman's voice came through, hesitant and apologetic. Mr. Cooper? My name is Janet Riley. I'm a nurse at Mercy Hospital in Harrisburg. I need to talk to you about something important. My grip tightened on the phone. I'm listening. Your ex-wife, Megan Cooper, gave birth at our hospital 3 months ago. She listed you as the father on the birth certificate. But sir, I was there during her prenatal visits. I overheard conversations she had with a man named Kevin Walsh. He was with her at several appointments, and I heard them discussing the pregnancy. The dates she gave you don't match what's in our records. My heart pounded. What are you telling me? I'm telling you that baby isn't yours, Janet said quietly. She was already 4 months pregnant when you left Pennsylvania, according to her medical records. She knew the whole time. I shouldn't be calling you, but I have a brother who went through something similar. I couldn't let her do this to you. I sat down hard on my porch steps. Do you have proof? I can't send your medical records. That's illegal. But when the paternity test gets ordered, the truth will come out. I just wanted you to know beforehand, so you weren't blindsided. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. Megan had come all this way, baby in hand, spinning lies to manipulate me into taking care of another man's child. The same man she destroyed our marriage for. The paternity test results came back a week later. Just as Janet had said, I wasn't the father. The baby was Kevin Walsh's. I had my lawyer send the results to Megan with a cease and desist order. If she contacted me again, I'd file harassment charges. She left Montana the next day without a word. Nicole found me that evening on the porch, staring at the mountains. She sat down beside me, didn't say anything at first, just let me process. "It's over," I finally said. "The test proved what I already knew. That baby's not mine." "I'm sorry you had to go through that," Nicole said softly. "I'm not," I replied, and I meant it. She showed me exactly who she is. Again, and this time, I didn't fall for it. I looked at Nicole, this woman who'd been patient with me, who'd never asked for more than I could give. "I'm done looking back. I'm ready to move forward." She smiled, squeezed my hand. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." Brandon called that night. He'd heard about Megan's scheme from Hannah, who'd gotten wind of it through some mutual friends back home. "Dad, I'm sorry," Brandon said. "I can't believe she tried to pull that." "It's not your fault, son. Your mother made her choices. Now she's living with them. Hannah wants to come visit for Thanksgiving. We both do, if that's okay." I felt my chest tighten, but in a good way. "I'd like that. I like that a lot. And Dad, I'm proud of you. For walking away, for standing your ground. You taught us what a man's supposed to do when the world tries to break him." After we hung up, I sat on that porch with Nicole beside me and felt something I hadn't felt in over a year. Peace. Real, honest peace. The kind that comes from knowing you did right by yourself, even when it was hard. 8 months after Megan showed up in Montana with another man's baby, I married Nicole on a Saturday afternoon in late May. Nothing fancy, just a simple ceremony at the courthouse in Billings with Jake as my best man and Nicole's sister as her maid of honor. Brandon and Hannah flew in for the weekend, both of them genuinely happy to see me moving forward. "She's good for you, Dad," Hannah said, hugging Nicole tight after the ceremony. "Really good. We bought a house together that summer, a modest place on 5 acres with a barn I converted into my own shop. Jake and I had become partners in his restoration business, and work was steady. I was making decent money, enough to help the kids with their loans and still have something left over. Brandon graduated from Penn State that December with his engineering degree. I drove back to Pennsylvania for the ceremony, first time I'd set foot in that state since I left. It felt strange being back, like visiting a place you used to know but don't quite recognize anymore. Megan wasn't at the graduation. Brandon had told her not to come. Apparently, after Kevin found out the baby was his, he'd panicked and cut off all contact. She'd moved in with her sister in Ohio, was working retail, and struggling to make ends meet. I didn't ask for details, didn't want to know. That chapter of my life was closed. Hannah graduated the following spring with honors, already accepted into medical school. She came to visit us in Montana that summer, spent 2 weeks helping Nicole plant a garden and learning to ride horses from our neighbor. She seemed lighter, happier, like she'd finally made peace with what happened. Mom called me last week. Hannah mentioned one evening while we were sitting on the porch. Asked if I'd seen you, if you were happy. What did you tell her? I told her you'd moved on, that you have a good life now with someone who treats you right. She looked at me. She cried. Said she made the biggest mistake of her life, letting you go. I nodded slowly. She didn't let me go. I left. There's a difference. I know. And for what it's worth, I'm glad you did. You deserve better than what she gave you. Nicole and I talked about kids sometimes, whether we wanted to start a family together. We decided we were happy as we were, just the two of us building something simple and honest. No lies, no secrets, no games. Just two people who'd been through hell and found each other on the other side. The shop I'd built back in Pennsylvania, Cooper's Auto Repair, was thriving under Tommy's ownership. He'd expanded, hired more guys, even opened a second location. He sent me photos sometimes, asked my advice on tricky jobs. It was good seeing something I'd created continue to grow, even if I wasn't part of it anymore. I never heard from Megan again after that paternity test. The divorce was finalized. The fraud charges were dropped after she signed an affidavit admitting she'd known Kevin was the father all along. She faded into my rearview mirror like a bad dream you forget upon waking. These days, I wake up next to a woman who chose me, not out of desperation or manipulation, but because she genuinely wants to be here. I work with my hands doing something I love. My kids are thriving, building their own lives. I've got good friends, a solid roof over my head, and peace of mind. That's more than enough. That's everything.